sleepest, arise from the dead.
Read the Bible, you'll find out that God's not too happy with what's going on around us.
Redeem the time, because the days are evil.
The Bible has not changed.
Boldly proclaim the restoration and preservation of Christian values in America.
Satan has brainwashed a whole nation.
As goes the church, so goes the nation.
Nobody's convicted of anything anymore.
And now, here's Last Call with your host, B.J. Edwards.
Morning, good morning, good morning.
Morning.
Hang on a second.
Here we are. Hang on.
All right.
Mine too.
I think we're ready now. We're going to have an incredible show for you today. You're going to learn a lot today. I guarantee you're going to learn a lot today.
We always have incredible shows.
Yeah. The world shifts itself. I want you to keep these quotes in mind as you're listening to the show today. The world shifts itself around your aim. Perception is a reality, right? And that's why Jordan Peterson. This one is from Thomas Sowell. Both of these are going to work together. One of the reasons for conspiracy theories, and yeah, we're going to talk about conspiracy theories, is an assumption that people in high places always know what they're doing. When they do something that makes no sense, devious reasons are imagined by a conspiratorial theorist, when in fact it may just be plain old ignorance and incompetence. Jumping off the conspiracy bridge this morning, folks. Man, are our adversaries really that intelligent, really that cunning? They can derail trains in Ohio, bring down bridges in Baltimore, and harness the wind. If you show up for a game and you give your opponent, think about you're a football team, and you're gonna be against Notre Dame. There's already an assumption there, is there not? That because you're playing Notre Dame, they're a special team. And what happens to you when you get into that ball game? You never forget that, do you? If you show up for the game and you give your opponent credit for what they didn't do, who are you putting in a position to win? This morning, we're going to crunch the conspiracy theories. In the second hour, we got a couple of great fellows that are in the game. They're doers. They're doers. They didn't sit around and complain. They got up and went out and got into the game. Can't wait. It's Jeff and Clay, and we're going to have a great time with them this morning. This is just half of what you see and nothing you hear. Speaking of which, I got to get this out of the road. You're about to listen to 2 hours of opinion and entertainment supplied by Last Call Radio. We're not doctors, lawyers, politicians, professional journalists, nor do either of us hold a doctorate degree in anything. Not that would make any difference. Our opinion, of course. We only ask that you personally and or corporately not take our statements or those that we voice from others personal, nor do we recommend that you act on them as if they are facts, although they might very well be just that. But again, that's our opinion. You're not required to listen to, act on, or repeat anything that you hear today, nor assume that they are facts, nor that any information we present is by no means meant to harm or threaten anyone. And yes, this is Christian Talk Radio with a sting. And for the record, I'm not a pastor, nor a preacher, street or otherwise, nor is Mr. Anderson, nor do I speak in tongues, unless using the obvious laws of nature of God to help lead others to the truth is thus. And please, Jesus was involved in politics. I've got a very interesting email from a Christian politician and how they see their role. It's no wonder we're losing. Politics being the atmosphere that all societies work and thrive. And at the moment in America where the battle rages, and yes, there's family politics. Easter coming up. Looking forward to that Easter dinner? Plato warned that one of the penalties for refusing to participate in politics is that you end up being governed by your inferiors. That could be secular humanists, God haters, communists, Marxists. The list goes on. And the darkest places in hell are reserved for those who maintain their neutrality in times of moral crisis. That was according to Dante. How you doing this morning, Mr. Anderson? You all ready for tomorrow and Easter and got big plans?
Resurrection Sunday is what I'm preparing for. I'm not looking for any bunnies. Had an interesting
anybody
day,
or any bunny? Go ahead.
Anybody or
any bunny?
Just my honey.
Go ahead. Thursday.
I had an interesting day Thursday. My daughter drove me up to Ann Arbor, that place up north.
Is that the USA? Are they in the USA somewhere? Go ahead.
I wonder sometimes what happened.
I get it.
My home state, born in Kalamazoo. So we drove up and met with my aunt and uncle, Fred and Judy Gould, whom I haven't seen for probably about 40 years, somewhere around there. Amazing to get together. And while we were talking, and they were sharing about their family and all the stuff they've done over the years and things like that. And I'm like, you guys are model families for our Natural Family Foundation. So I explained a little bit about what we're about, but I was like, they're up to 10 grandchildren and 5 great-grandchildren at this point.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, just amazing to get together for a couple of hours and talk and share update. It's shameful I let 40 years go by, but anyway, that was my adventure this past week.
You had a totally different perspective, didn't you, Mr. Anderson? Going into things. Yeah.
I did.
And when you get together with family members, I'm working with a group of folks, and we're really concerned about what's going to happen in November and the possible friction. And we're trying to remind people of who they are. I mean, there is no reason for tension at the dinner table this Easter, or people you talk with. There's really no reason for that. Remember who you are. Remember how we got here. Remember the basics. Absolutely. Hey, what happened, Walter? Go ahead.
I just said the basics. I agree with you.
While we were away, good news, bad news, and I'm not too awfully sure. First, the good news. Is the House GOP falling apart? The View host, that could be good news. The View host at NBC, it's very telling. The View host seethed at NBC's decision to hire Ronna McDaniel. Now, folks, we have a group of people that talk about bipartisan. We need to let everybody into the tent, right? We need to be inclusive. What happens when a news media, or should I say these news media, decides to include Ronna McDaniel, the former chair of the Republican Party? They give her a spot on their newscasts. It's inclusive, right? Like the family, totally inclusive, includes everybody. Apparently not. I mean, you talk about huffing and puffing and complaining. Oh my goodness. Just because somebody's going to come on and may have an alternative opinion, man, if you're ever going to let somebody on from the Republican side, it would be Ronna McDaniel. She could definitely help that side out. They don't even see that. They see the possibility that somebody might have a contrary opinion. Boom, out the door. If you look at when you get in a conversation with your liberal friends, bring this subject up and how inclusive you all are. Really? Ronna McDaniel, Exhibit A. Massachusetts losing 75 million monthly on shelters due to migrant crisis. Somebody's going to take notice. Canada discovers the high cost of gun control. Census data could spell trouble for the Biden in key swing states. Trans activists are mad that straight men only want to date biological women. I'll repeat that one. Trans activists are mad that straight men only want to date biological women. Oh, well, I'm telling you. Oh, that's horrible. Trans activists are mad that straight men only want to date biological women. ACLJ to sue Biden to stop war on Christians. And folks, there is a war on Christians, or should I say a war on the truth. My opinion, of course. Youngkin, Virginia, vetoes 2 top legislative priorities for the VA Dems. There's a Republican that's doing something. Tennessee Senate passes bill to ban chemtrail spraying while corporate media pretends there's nothing wrong. Democratic National Committee holds emergency call as Dems panic over RFK-J's VP pick. Boy, I'm telling you what. I am telling you what. His pick, number one, it's very telling. If you ever wondered where Kennedy was coming from, that ought to tell you everything you ever wanted to know. A liberal, pro-abortion, climate control, everything that our VP of the United States currently is for, this VP is for. They're interchangeable. This one talks probably a little bit better.
And has more money.
Yeah, that's true. That may be a reason too. Yeah, money's there. Yeah, okay. One state enacted a law protecting children from harms of social media. Yeah, Florida. Who else, right? Speaker Mike Johnson announces plan to fund Ukraine effort. Why? Ukraine effort. Now, why is that good news? I got this information from John Birch Society, and they're asking their members to drill down on Christian Mike. All right, some bad news. I'll give you your feed. Michigan offering citizens $500 per month to house illegal immigrants. Plus what the federal government gives them, what the state gets them. Bill Gates confirms digital IDs will be mandatory to participate in society. I saw a sign in our neighborhood, a liberal lady is selling eggs. Going to get to know her. Nancy Pelosi's son gets off scot-free again for money and mail fraud. Democrats vote against bill that would stop Biden administration from flying illegals into American communities. Amid banned books, DEI cuts, and don't say gay laws, 7 states will mandate LGBTQ inclusive criteria. Now from our I don't know pile. Garland threatened with contempt over hiding Biden's secret tapes. Now on the surface, this might sound like it has good news possibilities. But you know what's going to happen here, don't you? Yeah. Going to get buried 6 foot under. A lot of yakking, a lot of those Republican dogs barking again. Rah, 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 rah. I didn't say anything about Jim Jordan. I just said a lot of Republicans, okay? The higher-ups at Boeing are jumping ship. I'm not interested in flying in the near future.
I hope they have parachutes.
Yeah. Well, who's making the parachutes? Hopefully the Secretary of Transport. Anyway, the higher-ups at Boeing are jumping ship. Gingrich says Gates unleashed demons after McCarthy ouster. Matt Gaetz, who got McCarthy out of there. Now they're having trouble with our current speaker. The vanishing of House GOP majority. I'm not sure about that one. You think I want to move this to the good news? What do you think? Huh? What do you think? One other, Boston Reparations Task Force calls for $15 billion, demands white churches contribute checks. If you ain't doing nothing out of there, folks, yeah. It's coming home. It's coming home to roost, is it not, church? The Boston Task Force on Reparation called on white churches to step up and pay the Black community back for racial inequities that root back to the transatlantic slave trade. In February, the Boston activists called for the city to fully commit to writing checks and for a $15 billion payout since the city's wealth was built on slavery. One more category, Mr. Anderson, and I'll let us get to break. Violence prevention group sued after a man is shot and killed during meeting. I don't know what to think about that one. And here's one from the definitely need more detail. Utah coach says team was shaken after experiencing racial hate at hotel during NCAA tournament. Like we said in the beginning, folks, the world builds itself around your aim. If you're looking for something, AKA racism or anything else, you're going to see it. Are you not?
You'll find it. Yep.
I didn't say you would or wouldn't find it. I just said you're going to see it. Hey, when we come back, we're going to talk about jumping off that conspiracy bridge. Wow. Are we all having a good time?
Last Call with BJ Edwards. Real talk about real life.
I invited Alex Jones to the show today, but I don't think he's going to make it.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah. Jumping off.
Go ahead.
We
do have David Arthur watching, and just keeping him in prayers while he's healing from that heart attack he recently had.
Yeah. And he's got from the stress. He's got an issue he's got to deal with too from all that, the physical stress. Yeah. Dave, shingles. Had a heart attack.
Yeah.
Well, now he has shingles. Good.
Yeah. So yeah, keep him in prayer. I just wanted to give him a shout out.
Jumping off the conspiracy bridge. Folks, whether it was during, after, or perhaps even before the tragic Francis Scott Key Bridge collapse in Baltimore, it seems that various theories with regard to the real cause literally exploded overnight. Was it the Illuminati? How about Putin, retribution for the pipeline? Huh? Big Brother? Donald Trump? Green Earth fanatics? The list goes on and on and on and on. And it was as with the Kennedy assassination, Oklahoma City, 9/11, or a famous prisoner's suicide, you name it, and boom, experts immediately begin to collect their proof of what really happened, knowing, of course, that it must have been their conspiracy, their theory. We're an amazing nation, folks, especially when it comes to our imagination. And then, of course, we argue over the facts, especially if you're a believer. And when it comes to that latter, I'm reminded of an email I got this week where a Christian had posted a request from his email recipients that they send him articles of interest that he can post on his site. This is to his Christian audience. News of the day, he said. Okay, so it started off very calmly, innocently, until one of the participants, God help you, volunteered a Bible verse with of course, their real spirit-filled interpretation. Well, it didn't take long. As expected, another reader piped in with their version of the truth. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? A difference between two Christians? 45,000 Christian denominations. and two Christians don't agree, or should I say, walk together? Sadly, as you might imagine, both of our Christian experts ended up eventually calling each other names and then calling it a day. But I digress. More on that later. But first, when it comes to major catastrophes, like what happened in Baltimore this past week, there are at least two basic rules at play here. One rule says that if something as big as what happened in Baltimore happened and mysterious, then that cause had to be big and conspiratorial. That's called proportional bias. Big equals big. Big problem, big event, big cause. The other is what I would call plain old bias or confirmation bias, which is defined as the tendency to look for information that supports rather than rejects one's preconceptions, typically by interpreting evidence to confirm existing beliefs while rejecting or ignoring any conflicting data. And yes, I have seen the videos, folks. Half of what you see and nothing you hear, right? Amazing. You start confirmation bias with a theory, then put only information into that template which matches what you already know, parentheses, to be the fact. There's just some sort of a conspiracy because no other explanation really makes sense. Occam's razor withstanding. And what is Occam's razor, for crying out loud? Occam's razor, by the way, says that if the answer is obvious, and in many cases simple, then use that answer. It saves a whole lot of time and effort, and I'll say stress. You know what they say, keep it simple, stupid. Let's talk about the bridge collapse. You know, before we do that, Mr. Anderson, you've got that JP video. I want to play that.
I do.
Yeah, can you play that right now before I get into that? Again, keep in mind Occam's razor. Just say that the answer is. Go ahead.
Something to talk about.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
He offers a good perspective, I think. Ready, set, go. Whoa.
So a cargo ship from Singapore crashed into the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore today. Obviously tragic, but questions are being raised. Was this a little terror event? Welcome back to the JP Reacts channel, my beautiful freedom-loving friend. This is where we like to call out the lies, hypocrisy, and corruption of tyrants and Satan, shine the light of awareness on woke absurdities, and highlight the amazing work of other freedom fighters. A little bit of an unusual coverage with a usual angle. As you saw the footage today, this is going all over the place. A cargo ship from Singapore crashed into the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore today. You see the footage, the bridge collapses. Pretty astounding. In this video, we'll walk through a little bit of a play-by-play of what happened, see the aftermath, and entertain some of the questions that are being raised about this. Is there more than meets the eye? Was this an innocent accident, or was it an intentional event? First, here's the replay once again. Just whack, got it. That section of the bridge collapses. Some of it's on top of the ship. Here you can see some of the aftermath of it as daylight is starting. Now, there's been conflicting reports about were there, cars there, people in the water. Some reports are saying, yeah, there's kind of casualties, unfortunately. I saw another report on the New York Post that indicated authorities got the bridge cleared right in the nick of time. I wasn't there. I don't know, but those are conflicting reports. A little bit more of the aftermath footage. There you can see big steel section of the bridge on top of the ship. I'm surprised ships like that don't just sink. I don't know. Yeah, pretty tragic. Now we're taking a look at some of the footage you may not have seen, and this is the ship approaching, and this is a little bit of a play-by-play. You'll see now the ship is losing power, indicated by the lights going off. I don't know if that means the engine is off. That part is unclear. I'm not going to make presumptions. You'll see the power comes back on. Thick smoke coming out of it. That's usually what ships do. Loses power again, and you can see it's steering right into the support column and about to make impact. Too late. Whack. Bridge goes down. Now to some of the questions being raised. Now, in a tragic event, especially when there's loss of life, there's this social construct that says if you question the narrative, then you're being insensitive to the loss of life. I fully acknowledge if there is loss of life, that's tragic. But I also don't buy into the mind control propaganda that says, don't question this or else you're being insensitive. No, I'm not a sheep. I don't fall for that propaganda. So taking a look at a few people raising questions. Alex Jones, he's retweeting an Andrew Tate tweet. We'll see his tweet in a second. But first, Alex Jones says, looks deliberate to me. A cyber attack is probable. World War III has already started. Yeah, it doesn't really dissect the details there, does it? But that's Alex Jones' opinion. Then we go into what Andrew Tate posted. This ship was cyber attacked, maybe presumably because you saw a loss of power, regaining power. Lights go off and it deliberately steers towards the bridge supports. Foreign agents of the USA attack digital infrastructures. Nothing is safe. Black Swan event imminent. The part of what Andrew Tate is saying that I find most compelling is the lights go off and it deliberately steers towards the bridge support. The footage we've already seen, I'm not going to belabor this and just replay it, even though you can see a little bit of it here. It sure as heck looked like the ship was steering directly to the support. I mean, there's far more area that isn't a support column. You just go under the bridge. But the small relative area that is the support column, it looks like it was steered right into it. Then the question becomes, was that deliberate? If it was, they've got like plausible deniability. The power was going out. It's chaotic. Of course it was an accident. And I could see that world. You know, if the power's going out, there's chaos, there's no lights. So how would the captain know the support column is there if he can't see it? Maybe he was making a bad judgment call. He thought the support column was there, so he was steering away from where he thought it was and steered into it. Things were dark, innocent-ish mistake, even though I'm sure the captain felt pretty crappy about that. But also, could it have been deliberate? No, JP, human beings aren't capable of committing atrocities. Yes, they are. We just don't want to believe it. We want to say, well, that could never happen here. Look at history, that happens. But when it happens today, that could never happen here. That could never happen today. I don't know. I don't have a conclusion. I just say, these questions that are being raised, unfortunately, I believe they're valid questions. And any attempt to suppress the questions with the narrative of, it's insensitive to believe anything other than what we're telling you. You, the ones that are trying to silence all other perspectives, want me to, okay, got it. You're going to tell me what's true and silence us from saying anything else. Okay, got it. Yeah, I don't trust you. But the plot thickens a little further. This was posted on Twitter by Concerned Citizen. Wow, the captain of the ship that crashed into the gantry of the Baltimore Key Scott Bridge was a Ukrainian. What a strange coincidence. And here you can see this is the Ukrainian captain as posted by Concerned Citizen. That doesn't prove anything. At most, it proves he's Ukrainian. Yet for some people, it raises suspicion. And taking a quick look at what some other folks on the interwebs are saying here in the comments under Andrew Tate's post, people think it's only a bridge. No, this is a major American port, and now it's basically cut off. Okay. Confirmation bias or actual legit info. We're going to shut down a major American port. To my point earlier, she says, I'm getting attacked for saying it was deliberate. People just aren't paying attention. That's the thing. Anytime there's a tragedy, by the way, not all tragedies are like as they appear. Anytime you question the tragedy, there's this what I would call mind control program that comes out and says, you can't do that. You're being insensitive to the victims here. But, well, if they tell us we can't do it, then maybe we must do it. Another commenter says, course change just before the bridge. This just 4 days after the terror attack in Moscow, which was blamed on Western proxies. This was a retaliation, terror for terror. As a freethinker, I think it's important to question everything, consider everything, while being careful not to just be blinded by our own confirmation bias. If you want to believe this was some kind of terror attack or inside job from the deep state in the U.S., you're going to find evidence that supports that. If you want to believe it was an unfortunate, innocent catastrophe, you're going to find evidence that supports that. So I think it's important that we see our biases so we can function outside of them. Otherwise, we're not a free thinker. If we're invested in the narrative, we're not a free thinker. If we're invested in our own confirmation bias, we're invested in the narrative. It's just the narrative part of our mind creates. But free thinking is outside of the media's bias, and it's even outside of our own bias. And I think free thinking is what leads us more to the light of truth and freedom. So for me, there's really only questions, no conclusions on this cargo ship hitting the Baltimore Bridge. That's my thoughts on it. I appreciate you watching this video. Look forward to seeing you on our next one.
Last Call with BJ Edwards. Real talk about real life.
Yeah, Mary Ellen, we'll get to that. We'll get to that, Mary Ellen. I like your comments. I like your comments. James Bond, if you want to come in, I think you had some questions or you have a theory. I have a couple theories, and I spoke to Mrs. BJ about them, and she's highly recommended I don't talk about the one theory because she does not want to get any more familiar with the FBI than she already is. So we won't discuss that. We'll discuss. It's not funny. We'll discuss the second theory, but I would really like to think. I want to get James in here, or
he's not there.
Alrighty, Norm, you want to come in? Yeah, it looks like I'm bring him in if you would, Mr. Anderson. Conspiracy theorist Norm, and Betty will let you in if you want in.
Well, the first red flag for me, this happened at 1:30 in the morning. Common sense tells me it's going to take the FBI at least an hour to get on the scene. And so that's 2:30. And at 4 o'clock, they're saying, oh, there's nothing here. It's just an accident. I mean, that's ridiculous. You can't complete an investigation in an hour and a half in the middle of the night. That's crazy. So that was the first big flag for me that there was an issue.
All right. Betty, you hold your hand up if you want to. Okay, you don't want to say anything? Well, we'll let get Norm in there. Or I'm sorry, James in there, but he's not available. Let me pull up.
My knee jerk was, well, that's the end of the Star Spangled Banner.
Oh, yeah, that was close to one of my conspiracy theories, Mr. Anderson. But I can't get into that. I cannot get into that. There's all kinds of, there was mention Ukrainian pilot, and Russia and Ukraine don't get along very well. So would it make sense that Putin would have a hand in this? What do you think? James, come on in, brother. Or you just going away? All right.
He's just gone away.
Really wanted to get his theory on this. Here's where I'm coming from. Now, keep in mind, proportionality bias and confirmation bias. Keep those two in mind, because you see what you have prepared yourself to see. There's an old saying: half of what you see and nothing you hear. You expect to see, if you went to court and you had 10 different people on a street corner and they saw an accident, how many different versions of that accident do you think you'd get? Yeah. 8 or 9 million.
Everybody will have everybody will have a story of what they saw.
Yep.
They saw the same thing at the same time.
Yep. Well, I'll keep Norm in here because he might want to comment on this. And in the case of the bridge collapse in Baltimore, given the lack of attention and effort on the part of today's modern man, especially politicians, the simple solution, Occam's razor, might very well apply here. The simple explanation being, let me get that up there. Okay. You can read that, and then I'll tell you what one of my possibility is. The simple explanation being that this was a stupid, avoidable accident, that if it didn't happen last week, it would soon happen. Now, if you want to conspire here, then you might say that the transportation-related events seem to be happening under the current administration and our DOT guru, Pete Buttigieg. Remember, there was a train derailment in Ohio? Then the problem with airplane doors, huh? There. You see how easy it is to plant a little conspiracy seed, even with the simplest explanation? Mary Ellen says, affirmative action hiring incompetence. Captain drunk on shore. Yes, ships can be hacked and directed remotely. Yes, the major bridge outage severely hurts the economy. Terror, she says, likely. I don't know. Incompetence? I think we're giving our enemy more credit than they're due. How many ships go in and out of that harbor on a daily basis?
I lost count.
Yeah. And how many accidents have happened at port there? And the probabilities, I mean, if you put $2 down for a lottery ticket every week, your chances of winning the lottery aren't pretty good. But if you put $2 lottery tickets down every day, or how about every hour, aren't your chances greater of winning that lottery? Come on now. How many ships go in and out of that harbor on a daily basis, on a weekly basis? Huh? Incompetence? Norm, what do you think? Possibility?
Possibility. You know, there's been an attack on, of course, every aspect of our country. And I don't know if you were keeping up with it or not, but last year, every week, there was a food processing plant that burnt.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that was an accident. I don't think it was a coincidence. And so they're attacking every aspect of the supply chain and what we're going to need. And, you know, of course, I try to look at everything from a spiritual point of view. You know, everything that God wants, the enemy's against, and we have, because we have set back basically as a church and let evil get a foothold, you know, it's going to continue to get worse and worse.
I get that. That. And again, we really don't know. But here's what we need to do is, first of all, clear the air. All right. Sometimes we need to just step back, take a deep breath, exhale, and then start putting the facts, gathering the facts, and then putting them together. And put them together in multiple possibilities, not just your prejudiced, but possibilities. Personally, I am still assessing information with regards to the cause of the Baltimore Bridge collapse, hoping that I can come to an objective explanation for this tragic event. And again, my prejudice is, well, look, if you look at the current individual that sits in the presidential office and the vice president, and the aforementioned head of the Department of Transportation, could you not make a good case that, yeah, this was incompetence? Take a look at our public schools, what they're doing to children. How much are they educating them in common sense and to think for themselves, huh? They're telling them to think about themselves, but not think for themselves. What about that? The list goes on. Again, I'm still taking information. And please keep in mind what Jordan Peterson said and Thomas Sowell said. Again, Jordan says that we basically build the world around our views. And Sowell says we're giving these folks a lot more credit than they're due. It sounds pretty simple, doesn't it? Half of what you see, nothing you hear. I don't know, folks. I don't know. JC, you got any thoughts on this? You want in? Go ahead and unmute yourself. Got to unmute yourself, JC.
Probably not a whole lot to say, but why we just sit around and let them destroy our kids.
Yeah.
What are we doing? I mean, that's what I ask everybody. People are like, they get irate about stuff, is talking about. I seen a stat the other day. Now, do you know how many of the percentage of kids in high school believe in God? What the percentage is?
If it was over 9%, I'd say it's an overestimate.
Why don't you try 2%. What are we doing? And 42% claim to be trans.
Yeah.
Look at where we're at. You said something in the opening about politicians.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about Christian politicians, send you an email or somebody. You know, and when you said that, the only thing that came to my mind was the Christian politicians are cowards. It's it.
I agree.
I'm done.
I agree. You remind me to read that email. Thanks, Jeff. One of our listeners is trying to present the Natural Family Month to their local public servants. I'm not going to say what the position is or where it's at. Okay. Again, we're nationwide, folks. Here's the response this individual got. Thank you for sharing your concerns and the proposed resolution regarding the recognition of the natural family. Again, Natural Family Month from Mother's Day to Father's Day, each week celebrating a particular aspect of the family, a total inclusive celebration. While I appreciate your passion and commitment, this is a Christian, by the way. While I appreciate your passion and commitment to upholding biblical values, it's important to recognize that as a diverse community, we must strive to honor the beliefs and perspectives of all our residents. As a Christian and following of the teacher of Jesus, I firmly believe in the power of love and compassion. However, as a public official, my primary responsibility is to govern in a manner that serves the interest of all residents, regardless of their religious beliefs. My words here, the truth notwithstanding. He didn't say that. I'm saying that. While I hold personal convictions, I recognize the importance of separating my role as a public official from that of a religious leader. Park your Christianity at the door, right? It's not my place to preach or impose specific beliefs on others through governmental proclamations. Jeff talks about indoctrination in public schools. Where is this boy getting his indoctrination, or girl? Love is a choice. Creating an environment where individuals feel respected and valued allows them freedom to make that choice. Therefore, issuing governmental proclamations, Gay Pride Month, my words, not his, with exclusive tones does not align with the spirit of honor and respect that our community deserves. If you have any future concerns, folks, if you're a radical non-Christian, you hate Christianity, would you not love to have this particular public official in office, knowing that if anything comes up that remotely resembles Christianity, they have to refute it. Otherwise, they'll be known as a Christian. Can't have that. No. Can't have that. Jeff, go ahead. I got him.
When I caught some of that you were saying there. I was in and out the door. The Christian says, well, I'm a Christian, but, and I always usually say, get your butt out of the way then. Here's what I've been saying to him now. When they start in that gobbledygook about diversity and all this stuff and what Jesus would do, I said, listen, stop and make him look. I said, now listen to me. Jesus was intolerant.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. I mean, it's all the perspective. If you're a radical anti-Christian, yes, but if you're a Christian, no, he's just telling the truth, right? Perception is reality. Perception is reality. I want to get a little more information on the vice presidential selection. I mentioned a few things earlier, Robert F. Kennedy's, but we're going to go ahead and take a break with Mr. Anderson. And when we come back, I'll get into that information. And I think James is trying to get in here, but having a difficult time doing so. B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson. This is your last call.
Keeping you informed. This is Last Call with B.J. Edwards.
We are so self-destructive. It's just absolutely amazing. I don't know how Robert F. Kennedy's candidacy is going to affect the election. My original thoughts is, he's going to take away votes from the current gentleman that sits in the presidential office, the former vice president. And yeah, I do hesitate mentioning the word president in this gentleman's name in the same sentence. The running mate, Nicole Shanahan, is a 6-figure donor to George Gascon. Sound familiar? The pro-crime Soros-backed prosecutor who helped wreck San Francisco and is currently wrecking LA. She also spent big on Measure J and Los Angeles Measure to reroute spending from law enforcement and prisons to social services and mental health treatment. In other words, not putting criminals and dangerous psychos behind bars. Apparently, RFK is looking to shore up his progressive bona fides. There's a major red flag here for common sense, but maybe even so for Democrats. And yeah, she did give a bunch of money for some sort of an advertisement. That's crazy. That was from my bad news, one left over. So here we are. What really happened in Baltimore? Or maybe the better question is, how can we use what happened in Baltimore to advance the cause of Christianity, the cause of common sense? How can we use that? I think just saying, well, wait a minute, there's some incompetence going on here, is a darn good start. And the silence on the part of our elected officials is kind of overwhelming, isn't it? They're not saying a whole lot, are they? Interesting. Mr. Anderson, any further comments on that? Don't mean to be ignoring you. Who does the outcome benefit, folks? Who does the outcome benefit? And how do we use it? Go ahead.
Well, it's really hard to answer that, actually. I always feel like I don't know. I feel like we're kind of at a disadvantage with the world. Our advantage is from a heavenly source. Therefore, you know, whatever the outcome is, I depend on our Father to make it right.
Yeah.
As he says, you know, he takes what is meant to be evil and uses it for good.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't always see immediate return on that, but we trust it through our faith that that's going to happen.
And go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
You have to keep in mind the laws of nature, and nature's God. And God is true to those. He set them up. They don't change. And we have to operate under those. And if we break a rule, God doesn't say, well, okay, it's a Christian, so it's all right this time. No. And you don't always get immediate results, by the way, from what you do, folks. It's not always immediate. You remember back in your past, you tested the waters a little bit, you know, stuck your toe in them, or you stepped across the line and then stepped back real quick, nothing happened. And you stepped across again, stayed for a few minutes, then went back. Then you decided just to stay there for a while. The longer you stay there, when you're breaking those natural laws, the worse off the situation is going to be, including you.
If you smoke cigarettes long enough, you'll feel the effects.
Exactly. I was just going to use that example. Yeah. It's
boy.
or put your children in government-run schools. Hey, geez, they're learning. They're having a good time. They're playing sports. Whatever could be the problem.
They can do multiplication table. Yay.
I didn't know they were that far along. I did not know they were that far along, Mr. Anderson. Sure.
Well, by 5th grade, maybe.
Yeah, you're a teacher. By the way, we've got a one of our guests coming up in the second hour is a teacher, and he's got a lot of interesting things to say about the system from years ago and present day. This is just absolutely amazing, amazing, amazing where we are. I can't emphasize enough that we stop being prejudiced. And no, I'm not talking about black and white. We are all prejudiced. If you're a Christian, you're prejudiced, aren't you? Huh? Better be. Right?
In what respect?
You believe that God takes care of everything and that there's a reason for that, right? And it's under God's control. As a Christian, do you not believe that?
I believe that it's under God's control, including free will.
Right.
So he allows us to do stupid things.
I've got my hand in the air. I'm a willing participant. I'm
also evidence of that as well. Sometimes I feel bad at the end of the day that I missed doing something or I did something I shouldn't have done.
Yep. I love it. Hey, we got a 2-minute warning coming up, and I want to bring our guests on. I'm really, really excited because we've got a couple more doers that we've uncovered. There's more of you out there than we all think, folks. It's just absolutely amazing.
There's a lot more of us than we realize.
Yep. So, BJ Edwards along Mr. Anderson, we're going to take a 2-minute warning, and we're going to bring Jeff Harden on and Clay Savage from, of all states, Maine. So
this next story, this actually came out a few days ago. This is Reuters, March 22nd. Russia adds LGBT movement to list of extremist and terrorist organizations. This is a major development. Russia has added what it calls the LGBT movement to a list of extremist and terrorist organizations, state media said last Friday. The move was in line with a ruling by Russia's Supreme Court that LGBT activists should be designated as extremists, a move that representatives of gay and transgender people said they feared would lead to arrest and prosecutions. Now, this next headline is from yesterday's Times of London. Putin launches crackdown on LGBT terrorists. And I want to read two paragraphs. Masked Russian police officers burst into a crowded gay club brandishing assault rifles and wearing body armor. On the floor, they shouted, forcing men to lie half naked and spread-eagled on the ground. They were accompanied by members of a pro-Kremlin nationalist group. The Times of London said the raid on the Pose Club in Orenburg, a city 900 miles east of Moscow, came after the Russian Supreme Court outlawed the international LGBT social movement as an extremist group. Although Reuters said no such entity exists. On Friday, Russia also added the same, again, this is Reuters, fictitious LGBTQ global movement to its official list of extremist and terrorist organizations. Here's what it means, folks. The Russians are fed up with Western perversion that's being used to destabilize societies. And the Russians are saying we are not going to allow the West to pervert Russian society by bringing in this gay homosexual movement into Russia and indoctrinating our youth. And within a generation, within a decade, Russia will go gay like America has gone gay. That's what they're saying.
Keeping you informed. This is Last Call with BJ Edwards.
And we are back. One of our guests is maybe having trouble getting in, Jeff. So we're going to have to start with Clay Savage, and Jeff Harden, if he can make it in today, are both from Maine. And through our friend, we were able to make this contact, Dave Arthur. And I'm very, very excited to talk to them because, look, I get tired of hearing complain. I get tired of hearing myself complaining. And if you get out and you start doing, then you at least have a reason to be complaining. And you just might get lucky and be able to do something. I think we got Jeff in here as well. Good. So I'm going to bring our guests on today, Jeff Harden and Clay Savage. Would you bring them on, Mr. Anderson, please? There we go. A couple Mainers. Is that what you call yourself? Mainers?
Good morning.
Yes.
Good morning, fellas.
Yes, Mainers. Maniacs, if you want to say.
I'm embarrassed that I didn't think of that. I love maniacs. A couple maniacs. Why didn't I think of it? Let me write that down. Yeah. All right. Jeff, I'm going to bring you in first. Why don't you give a little bit of background, where you're coming from, basically from a vocational standpoint. You graduated from high school, went into a job. What was your vocation for a time being, Jeff?
Well, actually, for a long time, I was a graphic artist, but I come from a family of builders, and I eventually got into building supplies, and I eventually landed a job with a building supply company on the coast of Maine here that's got a chain of stores, and eventually was a manager of their paint department, and did that for 22 years until such time that God pulled me out of a career job that I expected to retire from, and I've been engaged in right now just self-employment. I'm a antique dealer and I do estate sales, but I do as much activism as I possibly can, and being self-employed makes that possible for me. So I'm just grateful to God for doing that for me.
I can attest to that, self-employed. Did you have a little radio experience?
No, a little newspaper background though.
Newspaper, yeah. You were co-editor of a small weekly newspaper?
Yes, called The Conservative. It was about 30 years ago now, but yeah.
Cool. We'll get back to you. Sit there and stew a while. While I talk, be a maniac. While I talk to Clay Savage. Clay, welcome aboard. Clay, a little bit about yourself, if you would. Can you hear us?
Well, first of all, thank you for having us. We really appreciate this opportunity to get the word out. And we are people that have had enough of the destruction of the public educational system here in the state of Maine and in many schools across the country. I am an educator. I was a school teacher in a classroom for nearly 20 years and an administrator for nearly 20 years. And also a lobster fisherman for about 16. So I've seen a lot of things and done a lot of things. But the reason I got out of education, I could see this storm cloud coming of immorality that is sweeping the nation, really. And I didn't realize how quickly it would happen. That's why I went lobstering for those 16 years. But during those years, I kept an eye on things. And all I could see was change, not improvement, just change for the worse in the public educational arena. And so finally, I happened to run across Jeff and another person that is very concerned about what's going on in public schools. And we have started to attend school board meetings, selectmen's meetings, and policy meetings, and we're trying to get in our school libraries and get the pornographic graphic material out of the libraries, where children are being not taught, they're being indoctrinated into the toleration of a system that is, well, I often say, if you don't stand for something and you tolerate everything, then you fall for anything. And I think that's what's happened to our public educational system. I'm very dismayed by what I see.
Yeah, and somebody that's coming from that background, you would know. How long ago did you and Jeff get involved in this situation in the schools? And by the way, folks, this is not book banning, unless if you were to take some of the books that are in our government-run schools, indoctrination centers, out on a street corner, and you were showing those books to a child walking across the street, you'd be picked up and thrown in and find some new friends in prison. Okay.
Yes, most likely you would be arrested and taken right to jail.
Yep. Pandering. Yeah, absolutely. And fellas, by the way, I was in school board meetings for 10 years. My kids were in school. I heard some things that were happening. I started going to school board meetings, and I mean, I was there almost every meeting, and the sideshows that they would put on. And what I found, and I want to get into what you're doing, but what I found in the government-run school is actually the unions, and this is the national union. It's done on a local basis, but the teachers union runs the schools, not your superintendent, not your teachers, the teachers union. That's my opinion, fellas. You can agree with it or disagree with it, but what they say is going to happen is what happens in the schools. And if you take a look at a school in Maine, in a large city, a small city, take a look at a school in Ohio, large city, small city, you're going to see the same thing happening, the same things being taught from an emotional standpoint, emotional learning. Then you're just going to see it everywhere. It's going to be pretty much the same, whether it be cat boxes for somebody who thinks they're a cat, or the books we talked about, or gender confusion. It's all the same. fellas?
Jim, I think a lot of that's happening also because the states are so heavily involved, and they've got very high-priced attorney firms that are working with them to just say that this is already this is settled law, and it's not.
I get that. What approximately how long ago did you two cross paths?
Well, it's probably about a year ago. I knew Clay from way back. He actually was a principal and a headmaster of a school that my some nieces and nephews of mine attended. But we met through a common friend that was involved in trying to address what was going on in the school, primarily the filth in libraries and force feeding this propaganda on the kids during a class time that they were forced to take. And but anyway, this one woman that we've been working alongside had been doing this for about 2 years, going to these school board meetings alone. And when I heard about this, I said, "This isn't right. I'll go with you." And then about the same time, she met up with Clay, and the three of us formed a little group that's taken right off. But that was we got active about just over a year ago now, maybe 13, 14 months ago.
Amazing. So go ahead.
Yeah, we started to decided that we weren't going to be what I call CNOs, Christians in name only. We were going to put on the full armor, and we were going to go fight and try to get some morality instituted back into our public educational systems. And because if you don't say anything, then you're as guilty as everybody that's just complaining and not doing anything. We decided we were going to do something, and we are trying to start an educational cooperative that may very well lead to a public school. And we're very proud of what we're doing. We take a great deal of effort, and very proud of what we're doing.
What is the name of your organization? This formed about a year and a half ago. Is that
yeah, just over a year ago.
Okay, what's the name of the organization?
It's Spotlight on Schools, and we decided on that name because it was the SOS. It was the distress signal that we wanted to really catch people's attention about and let them know the danger their children are in these public schools. And so we figured that was an appropriate name to use that acronym. Kind of drills it home for people. And so we began by primarily drawing attention to the filth in the libraries and some of these, like you said, the SEL classes and that type of thing. But primarily, our first focus was this age-inappropriate material in the libraries. And by their own admission, this is age-inappropriate. They just have differing ways of wanting to handle it. But the thing is, they wouldn't have handled it at all if a ruckus hadn't been raised. And so they went from having school board meetings that maybe one or two people might attend on occasion to some of these meetings started turning out 125 people at one meeting, and they didn't know what to do. And so this has been a great recruiting tool. This sick stuff in the libraries is a great way to get a conversation started, and also a great way to get someone activated. And that's what we tapped into.
If people show up, if they show up, and you mentioned in the school board meetings I went to, there were probably 2 or 3 regulars, and this is a very large school district. 2 or 3 regulars. There were more union members in the back of the room than there were parents and people that were concerned about what was going on. And you bring up a great point. When you two started to get involved in this, what was the first event? What was your first impression going to that first event, or what series of events maybe? But what was your first impression?
You take that one, Clay.
I think you're touching on one of the main.
Clay cut out.
Larry's back, I think.
Yeah. Clay, you back?
Are we back?
Yeah, we're back. Go ahead. You're locked. He's locked up again. Go ahead, Jeff.
My first impression was I was just astounded by the apathy. As you mentioned, I figured there'd be 20, 25 people in any given meeting, and to see that there was this one woman had been alone there for almost 2 years fighting this battle, I was astounded, frankly. And so the first thing we thought is, let's get the word out and stack these meetings. We got to get people to these meetings.
So you had a line of people after that, right? Just they couldn't wait to get into the school board meeting. Was that it?
Oh, some of the things that happened from the podium was unbelievable. There's some really vocal people. You just have to get them fired up and jump started.
Yeah. Clay, go ahead. If you can come in, go ahead and try.
Well, you alluded to it a moment ago, BJ, when you mentioned how few people were attending school board members. But you walk down the street and you talk to some of these same parents, and if you told them what was going on, and if you do tell them what's going on in some of their schools, they just, oh, that's terrible, that's terrible. But you know what? You don't see too many of them showing up at school board meetings and taking part in things, because the apathy in this country has allowed a lot of this to happen. We have become a very apathetic nation. And as the church, I think, has dropped the ball because, like I say, it's kind of like, I don't want to say anything. They might say something back at me. Well, tough. You know, when you stand up and, you know, remember the old hymn, Onward Christian Soldiers?
Mm-hmm.
We're in a war. We're in a war for our nation and our public education system. And the parents need to wake up and start attending these school board meetings and holding the school boards accountable for their decisions and the policies that they create that govern how children are taught and what they are taught. It's absolutely appalling.
So parents are going to wake up. They are going to wake up. But the question is when. Now is the best time to do this.
Well, I hope it's not too late.
Yeah. Well, it depends on the age of your child. And first of all, I appreciate what you're doing, okay? But I also, and I think this is probably going to lead into discussion after our break, but I'm of a mind that fixing a bad idea is a bad idea. And I firmly believe the public schools are a bad idea. So with that in mind, Mr. Anderson, take us to break. When we go back to the break, I'll give you gentlemen a chance to answer that question. And I think James Bond wants to come in and have a comment or two as well. When teachers fight to keep drag queens in school and the Bible out of the school, you need new teachers. Yeah. That's it.
Faith, discussion, and so much more. Last Call with BJ Edwards.
And we are back. I've got a message from Jack. Do you know Sean, part of the Mordecai mission?
Is that Sean McBride? That's the only Sean that I would know.
Maybe. I don't know. Okay. I want to get Roger in here and see if Roger has something to add to this, and then we could talk about this, fixing this bad idea thingy. Roger, go ahead.
Jim, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, and this is a serious question and comment. So please take it that way. I don't call them public schools anymore. I call them government schools.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
They are government schools. And as a parent who's put kids through a little mixture of public and Christian, the Christian schools aren't perfect. Let me tell you, the Christian schools had their secret hangouts to do with the stuff that all the public school kids did too. But in the Christian school, for the most part, they were reinforcing what I was trying to teach. I cannot think of one area in government schools other than maybe math, because they can't screw 2 + 2 up too much.
Oh yeah, they can.
But I cannot think of one area in government schools that
Jeff, can you hear me?
That is supportive of my Christian belief. So why would I keep them in the government school? Why would I not do everything I could to get them out? That's kind of my question.
Okay, good question, which leads into what I was saying. Fixing a bad idea is a bad idea. So, and I know that you're trying to have an effect in the government-run schools, but do you have a side vocation that you're involved with as well?
Well, this has been the genesis of all this, because I'm embarrassed to say that I wasn't in this fight earlier, but you get a quick education the moment you peek behind the curtain there. And so anyway, so what we learned early on was just what you said. It was a bad idea from the beginning, but in fact, it wasn't a bad idea. It was a good idea for them. They knew exactly what they were doing when they began the whole public school system. And you can go all the way back to Horace Mann and beyond. But and once you see that, then you realize that truly anything we're doing, although it's all well-meaning, is rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic 2 hours after it hit the iceberg. So what we began to do then was quickly to switch gears to say, yes, this has been a good thing. We will continue to give them the black eye that they so richly deserve. But we need to switch gears now, and SOS can also stand for something else. We need to encourage people to swap out schools. Get your kid out of public school, get them into a homeschool or hybrid school or cooperative. Thank you, sir. And so 007 just gave us a thumbs up, so I appreciate that. But so that's what we're doing. We're now switching gears. So as we take on more people, we're going to have a department that keeps its tab and fingers on what's going on, finger on the pulse of what's going on in the public schools. That's only because we still want to make it better for any kid that's left in those hellholes, frankly. But we do know that we can't redeem that system. And so, Clay, could you tell them how we've moved on in the 3 options that we're offering or trying to get involved with?
Yes, we would like to save every child if possible, but the likelihood of that is, is pretty slim. But what we want to do with our educational cooperative is talk parents into homeschooling, number one, and we will help them. We will supply support. We want to help parents get their kids out of the quagmire of public education. Number two is that we want to also start a private school where children can grow at their own rate. They can develop and be developmentally ready. The things that are happening in public school, many children are not developmentally ready to be given the decision whether they want to be a boy or a girl, which God made very clear at the beginning. And we want to see children used, nurtured, and grown in a way that they are useful to our society, to God, number one, and our society in general. And that is not being taught in high school or elementary schools, for that matter. Many high school graduates now can't even name the 3 branches of government. They can't even do simple arithmetic. They write. They can't read cursive writing. They can't do so many things that are necessary in our culture if we are going to progress as a culture. We've had too much change and not enough improvement.
Amen. But wait a minute. I'm not good enough to be a teacher. I don't have a master's degree in education. So how could I possibly teach my child? Go ahead, Clay. Or did we lose you?
I don't know if you heard that one. One thing that we've been able to do is we're encouraging, as he said, 3 things.
Teachers, a certificational system was the teachers' union.
Yeah, Jeff, go ahead.
Whether you got that or not.
Clay, we're gonna have to. We're having a difficult time getting you in. Jeff, go ahead. The problem is I don't know enough to be a teacher. And my kid's going to be, just so ill-equipped when they go into society. How do you handle that question? How do you handle that concern?
Well, that's a great question. It's the question, really. And so what we found is that we're offering, or we're trying to be involved in 3 aspects of getting kids out. Number one, we're encouraging people that have kids in the public school to get them out and homeschool them themselves. And to that end, God has sent us some people that's what they do. They're coaches that go around the state of Maine and help people get up and running with homeschooling. And so they can tie them in with all kinds of resources. We field the basic questions right out of the gate, but the things that we can't answer, we farm on to people like that. That's what they do. So we're not reinventing the wheel. And then second of all, we are, and this is all, it's just getting beyond conceptual stage now. So hopefully this isn't too premature to be talking about this, but we certainly see the vision and we see God working. But the second thing is that we're looking to start a homeschool cooperative. That's our term for it, or a hybrid school, I guess some could call it. But what we envision is that their child would attend one location for maybe 3 days a week. But, let's say Monday and Friday, they're with the parents. And then the 3 days a week in the middle of the week, we augment what they're doing. And we want to encourage parents also to take part in that. But what we found by looking into that and how to go about that is that there are many co-ops that are doing that very thing, and that we want to make a co-op of co-ops, if you will. So I don't want to overuse the term cooperative, but it's heartening to me once you start going down this road to see how many people are out there. And I'm not one for reinventing the wheel. So we just want to come alongside each other. And the other beautiful part about this is so many of the people that are doing this are Christians. And I think about Christ's prayer in John 17, that his people would be one. I'd love to see us working together and to see pastors and churches coming in on this very, very strongly and working together. And as one in Christ, I think it's beautiful. And then ultimately, from this pool of homeschoolers or the pool of students we would have in the co-op or the hybrid school, we envision eventually starting a private school for this entire area. But ideally, it would be great to see these little 10, 12 student co-op schools springing up in every one of the 9 towns that make up our regional school unit.
I like the idea of a private school, but I don't like the idea of a private school, because it seems to me when you start getting the numbers up, the government takes notice and they can entice or intimidate, and you could end up right back where you started with something that's named a private Christian school, but ends up being nothing more than a public school with a Christian name on it.
Incredible insight. Thank you.
And keep in mind, we got into this trouble in the first place.
That is very true.
We got in this trouble in the first place because we expected the church to what? Do their job, right? Mm-hmm. And what happened? The government come in and said, "Oh, okay. Here, let me show you how to do this. We have the experience." Speaking of experience, there's a lot of experienced parents out there that have already done homeschooling. For those that are listening in here, they have the experience. They can help you out. They want to help you out. Yes. And you have a lot of ex-teachers, hi Clay, that want to get into this business, and Mr. Anderson that want to get in and help, that are really frustrated with what has happened to their vocation, what they chose, and they see how bastardized it's become. And this isn't what education is about. Not at all. Not at all. And that's probably part of the reason that you're into this. And here's motivation, and I'll let you speak, Clay. Here's motivation. Folks, you put your child through a government-run school and you say, well, I don't have the money to or the time to homeschool them. Now, remember when you were bringing your child up and you taught them the ABCs and the numbers? Who did that? That was you, right? Who did a good job at that? That was you, right? You can take it to the next step. You're more educated than that. Believe me, what they're teaching these kids in school, I mean, just compare the scores where we compare with the nation. But here's the bottom line. After 12 years of this indoctrination, these schools are going to send you back complete strangers.
That's true.
And ask yourself this question. How much money would you pay? What would you give to get those children back? Huh? Really? Clay, go ahead. And I think Betty wants in.
Well, that is a very good question. And we hope to answer that, because we envision a school where we will find a way to help any and every parent who wants to get their kid out of the public educational system. We will find a way to make that work for the parent. We may have to work hand in hand with that parent. And that's what we want to do, because every kid that we get out of public education has a chance to experience something that we all wanted to experience when we started our educational career. And if you have a parent that is willing to work with us we'll work with them and we'll make that work for that child and that family, because what we want to do is strengthen families. Because you are right, the family is the building block of any and every society in the history of humankind. And if we don't do a better job of taking care of it, as we haven't now for actually a few decades, we get the mess that we're in right now. And it's time to stand up, be counted, do something to save your child from the ills of public education. Get them homeschooled or get them into a private school. But I think that the one reason we want to go with the private school, because we don't want any funding from the government whatsoever. Because the minute they get their claw in there, then they're going to pry. And so we want to do the best we can for every child.
I get that. Mr. Anderson, bring Mr. James Bond back in, and Betty will get to you after the break. James?
Oh,
go ahead.
Real quick. I think of the church I go to has a $200,000-$300,000 mission budget. We want to go overseas with money and help there. And I think, what greater mission than is to help underwrite homeschooling families, private school families. I mean, it's just unbelievable. The money is there.
Wow.
Reassessing it. I just think, our church, again, it's a $3.5 million budget.
I'm sorry, I missed it. I didn't get anything that he said.
He's saying, what about foreign missionaries? What about taking that energy and bringing it in here and among other places, put it in the educational system?
Jim, and then the only thing I would say too is I'm opposed to this idea of developing.
I saw Jeff clapping and applauding, so it must have been something good that he said.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to mute you here for a second, okay? Go ahead, Roger.
I don't see the need for these private Christian schools, and the reason is all of the state regulations that are required. I would tend to say do a hybrid, a co-op, get the kids to meet 2 or 3 times teaching, and just GED them if you need to get a certificate or something. But this idea of developing private schools with all the regulations that are thrown your way, I just think it's a lot of work that's not needed, in my humble opinion.
I like your humble opinion.
In the counsel of many, there's much wisdom, folks. That is part of the blessing of the program this morning. But part of the reason we do this program is to get people to start thinking and start talking. And I didn't even think about that. I mean, Jeff, it sounds like you didn't even think about the possibility of how the government's going to get their hands on this, and how the church has been inefficient to begin with. Why would you turn that back over to them? They can help, but it needs to be parent generated, parent oriented, like a PTO, if you will, parent teacher organization.
Amen.
Yes, we need a much more influence on parents, and we need more active parents to get involved in their children's education, no matter what.
I get that. Mr. Anderson, let's take a break. When we go back from the break, I've got several people who want to get in from our panel. BJ Edwards, along with Mr. Anderson, this is your last call.
Last call with BJ Edwards. Real talk about real life.
And welcome back, folks. We're on with Jeffrey Harden and Clay Savage, maniacs, absolute maniacs. What they're talking about is just crazy. Betty, come on in. Go ahead and mute yourself. There you go.
Yeah, well, I love these crazy maniacs because we need more like them. But anyway, the unions are very dangerous. I was a bus driver, and you can't imagine what I went through. They ran my car all over, almost totaled it with the bus. School didn't do nothing. They threatened to shoot us. They threatened to burn the house down, just one thing after another, and for 15 years I went to the police and they wouldn't do anything, and it just came to a point where I just had to quit. And also, there's a guy that me and him, we go to the school board meetings once in a while, but we are trying to get people to join us. And people say, well, my kid's playing sports, or he's doing this, or our school would never get that garbage in. Well, we just passed that issue 1 where the schools or whoever can vaccinate your kids, can change their gender, can do whatever they want without the parental consent. So we're trying to get a group together, because the more you have, the more effective you are.
Yeah.
And I believe that, you believe in that. And also, I believe there's moms out there or parents that are willing, like I'm trying to get my son, he has a 3-year-old, to go homeschooling. And I said, there's got to be mothers and people out there, or even you, if you had a computer set up, because they're both working, that they would be willing to teach your child, So pay them $100 a week. You're paying $700, $800 a month for daycare who's messing with this child. And I don't even trust the daycare care that they go to, because my daughter-in-law was I was saying something that she needs to know a phone number in case she gets in trouble. Either your phone number, something, so she can call. So my daughter-in-law kept saying to my granddaughter, what number would you call? The number when you call. And she's trying to get her to say 911. And you know what she says? 666. I about over.
Wow.
Had a heart attack. I want her to that preschool, and I want her homeschooled even at a 3 or 3.5-year-old. So there's this thing called ABC Learning School or whatever. Is that something like a homeschool? Or how would I go about getting a mom out there that is willing? She has 2 or 3 kids, and she's willing to take 2 or 3 more kids on, to teach them. Is there a list out there?
Thanks, Betty.
Thank you.
Fellas?
Clay, can you speak to that about the list? I don't know.
Yeah, I think he's having trouble while he's trying to get in. Norm, go ahead. I think you have a comment or a question.
Yeah, a couple of comments. My wife and I were foster parents, and when we were, the kids were required to go to public school, and the day we adopted them is the day we pulled them out of public school. But what I wanted to say is there are tremendous amounts of information out there and help for moms that might feel inadequate. I mean, there's all kinds of programs to help them. And I'm sure, like in our area, we had a group of homeschool moms, and, we had get-together so the kids could socialize and so forth. So, of course, it's plain in Deuteronomy 6 that God gave the requirement to educate the kids to the parents. But and one thing I want to say too, it kind of bothers me when I hear Christians at the school board meetings
I'm not getting anything.
Talking about age appropriate. Let me tell you, if it's not good for a first grader, it's not good for a 12th grader, and neither is it good for the parents, because teaching sin is inappropriate for anybody.
No audio and very little video.
Yeah, you're really having trouble, Clay. Gonna have to take you out for now. Maybe you'll go out and come back in. Yeah, Norm. Jeff, any comments on that?
Yeah, no, I like that. And I guess the reason we started using the phrase age inappropriate was because when we would say pornographic materials, which clearly it is, then they get into all the legalities of what constitutes porn, what doesn't. And it's amazing what the law does protect. So we found as long as we showed this stuff around and even using the term age inappropriate, it still gets the message across. Okay. But as you said, if it's an inappropriate, if for any, it's inappropriate for any minor.
Right. It's inappropriate for anybody. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
I think we're having a lot of technological problems.
Yeah, Clay just can't get in. Can't get in. Darn it. We'll have to work that out. We only got a few minutes left. We've got 15 minutes worth of something that we have to do here shortly. JC.
Yes, sir.
Your comment.
Hey, you know what? They sit and look at all this stuff, talk about age inappropriate and this and that and homeschooling. The people really don't care. Most of them. Them parents don't care.
They don't know to care, Jeff. They
Well,
don't know to care.
But here's the deal. The churches don't care. The
Yeah.
pastors don't care.
Well, that could help.
The parents don't care.
That could
It's
help.
a babysitting service. And the reason why I can say this, I was in the schools, middle school football coach, high school baseball coach. When you're in there and see the nonsense that goes on, and I ain't even been in there for 10 or 12 years, it is absolutely crazy that the Christian churchgoers will put their little kids on a little yellow school bus and give them a one-way ticket straight to hell. That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
I'm glad we got some people that do the board meetings and trying to do this, trying to do that, but it's just a small percentage. Let's say Mount Vernon School here, we got what, 2,000 kids in that school? What are we going to pull out, 100 kids to homeschool? Maybe 200? What about the rest?
Well,
It's gonna,
you have to start. You have to start.
we
Yeah,
have to
you-
start.
you're
but
doing- you're doing that.
We've been trying to start.
Okay.
And
Maybe.
we're losing ground. We're losing more kids than we're gaining.
Have you tried the co-op, the homeschooling? Are you?
Well,
are you
we're talking about that with Pastor Matt of turning the church house into a schoolhouse.
I think
In
that's a
Knox
great start.
County, there's 140 churches in Knox County, in one county. 140 churches sit empty Monday through Friday.
Correct.
Yep.
But the parents think these schools are good. They really do. And I can say that because I've done 2 years of school board meetings and nobody shows up.
Yeah.
You go in and you pour your heart out for the concern of these kids and the love of kids. That's why I coached for 25 years, because I actually love the kids and care about them. But most people don't care. The vast majority, they're just going along to get along. They're too busy to get involved. And then I get PC, you know what's going on in the school the other day? My kid was in the office. They booted him out. They expelled him, this and that. I said, let's go in. Let me get some people rounded up and we'll go in. They don't want to do it. Well, I'll just go talk to the superintendent, or I'll go talk to the principal. As well, that ain't going to get nothing done. They don't want to get involved because everybody in your community knows a school teacher or a phys ed teacher or a music teacher. They all see each other on Friday nights under the lights on the football field or in the gymnasium for the basketball game or on the baseball field with their kids in a dugout. It's insanity.
No, I get that, and I'm going to add one more thing to the equation here. Thanks, Jeff, JC, and I'll let Jeff get in here and Clay if he can. Here's something else that is very, very important, and this can be minimized with our natural family movement. Okay, sadly, and this is from David. Sadly, we have a lot of single family homes out there that can't afford to stay home. So enabling them to educate their children while they can still work is a solution, maybe not the solution, but well worth the attempt. What about the single parents? Clay, I'm so sorry, man. We just aren't able to hear you. Jeff, go ahead, please.
Well, we've thought about that. I'm sure this is something that everybody works through when they're thinking about that. But there are probably people out there that are either retired teachers, such as Clay, or others like that, that
You're speaking
they
of the
could
single parent right now.
offer their
Single
services.
parent, the private school, because as we get along with our program here, we'll have a private school that we hopefully will be able to make.
Yeah, he's cutting in and out. We're gonna have to take him off, Mr. Anderson. I'm so sorry, Clay. Jeff, sorry. Go ahead, please.
So our thought was that we think outside the box and make it worthwhile to someone to step up to the plate to educate other students. In other words, there may be homeschooling families that are have 2 or 3 of their own kids that might be willing to take on one more kid. So another way that we use the acronym SOS is save one student. If all we can do as one person is to save one student, each of us, that's a lot of kids. And so, like I said, if you're already homeschooling and you'd be willing to take on one other child that's of the similar age that your children are, that you're homeschooling, if we can make that worth their while, then it takes care of the income issue.
There's another thing too that I just thought of. Of course, I would think of this. Think in terms of family. Yeah, you have a single mother, but is there not a family member there somewhere that might be able to dive in? Hopefully a grandfather and a grandmother combining together to help. Okay, you can work, but we'll take care of the education of the student through the homeschooling. Maybe I don't know how you co-opt this out.
Yeah,
It can be done. First of all, you have to recognize what is happening in our government-run schools. You have to recognize that. It is critical. And it is not good. There's a lot of PR that goes on in the community. I can remember going to a school board meeting and I'd hear something in the school board meeting that was kind of negative, and then I'd look for a report in the paper the next day. It wasn't even there. And I talked to the press and they go, well, yeah, they kind of discussed that beforehand and they got this resolved and everything's okay. I'm going, what?
I see your secret weapon, Mr. Anderson's arrived.
Yeah, yeah, yes. He's an ex-school teacher. Go ahead,
There you go.
Mr. And then we're gonna we got a
former teacher. I think one problem I see a lot of is everybody went to school and they look at themselves and say, well, I went to a public school and I don't see a problem. Of course, I might say, really? But that's one thing. They're educated by their own education. They don't really know what's going on currently. I don't really know what the school looks like currently. But I've been around enough people to realize that it's a bad situation. The other thing is, and we talked about it earlier, is get the government money. Quit voting for school levies. Quit supporting it. I don't care if they take away your sports program or these other frills and spills. You got to start somewhere, and you got to stop feeding the beast. You just got to stop feeding the beast. And then you work for legislators that won't support the schools financially. Government schools shouldn't even exist. I don't even think they're constitutional as far as the national level goes.
may not be.
State and local funding, I mean, I don't know. One thing that is starting to take place a little bit in our area is Hillsdale is promoting what they call classical education. And somehow they're grabbing public funds to be able to open up these schools a little bit at a time. So that might be of some interest to look into their program and see if you can get money, Jeffrey, you and your organization, to see if you could get some of that.
Well, another idea we've had for funding is, again, save one student, but that you sponsor one student. And so, churches could do that. That's what Norm was speaking to. Why can't we grab some of that money? And, James was talking about that.
Yeah,
why can't we grab some of that missionary money and use it right here in the mission field at home here?
Amen.
Absolutely.
Amen. Norm, we can let you in for a second, but we're gonna have to Jeff, we're gonna have to go in about 2 minutes because we have 15 minutes of time we have to use for the Easter celebration.
Sure.
Norm, can you make it quick, sir?
Sure. One quick question for Jeff. Is the biggest issue getting parents to see the problem?
Yeah, I think it is really because of what Mr. Anderson just said. You're only educated by your own education. That was perfectly said. And I hope you don't mind. I want to borrow that saying.
Yeah, they would be standing in line, Jeff, if they really knew what was happening.
That's correct. And so Betty talked about the ABC school. I'm not familiar with that, but I am familiar with the ABCs of public school. And I want to put that up here.
Another brainwashing.
The ABCs of public school, another brainwashed child.
Or how about this one? Maybe you like this one.
Can I read this?
Can't read this. Thank public schools.
Hey, can't read that. I can't read that.
Well, you're a teacher, so okay, we get that. Hey, Jeff, we'll try to get a better connection with Clay next time we get you guys on. We want to have you on. We want to keep a progress report. Hopefully, we've been able to exchange some information here that will help you. And please keep your heads up, guys. I mean, this is great work that you're doing. Clay, again, I'm sorry we couldn't get you in, brother. Still don't think we got you. No, we still don't.
I mean, because if all this was encouraging people, that's all we want to do. And we, as one of your folks said, we got to start somewhere. I think Mr. Anderson, you got to start somewhere.
Amen. Amen. Hey, gentlemen, thank you very much. We'll have you back on. Keep a progress report, and we'll work on getting a better connection with Clay next time around.
I can appreciate all that you do, BJ, and Last Call.
Yes. Well, hey, you guys are a blessing to me, both of you.
Thank you so much.
Even though Clay can't handle his technical end.
But he's a star now.
I get it. Mr. Anderson, I think we have to go to a break, and then we've got a couple items that we want to show our folks. BJ Edwards along with Mr. Anderson, or maybe we'll just jump right into it. I don't know what you need to do, Mr. Anderson, but let's do it.
Physically. Before we explore the actual crucifixion, it's important to give some context. Let's look at Isaiah 53, verse 4 through 6. Surely he took up our pain and bore our suffering, yet we considered him punished by God, stricken by him and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities, and the punishment that brought us peace was on him, and by his wounds we are healed. We all, like sheep, have gone astray. Each of us has turned to our own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. The crucifixion is the ultimate statement of love. Jesus took the punishment for my sins, for your sins. He died on the cross to make atonement for our sins. The beauty of the cross is that by his wounds, we are healed. We can now experience forgiveness and intimacy with God that is impossible outside of Jesus' sacrifice on the cross. I hope that the following account can help you understand how deeply God loves you, how much he was willing to endure to offer you forgiveness and adoption into his family. Today we are going to explore the physical experience of Jesus on the cross. This content was gleaned from Dr. Truman Davis's medical account of the cross. There's a link in the description below. Jesus faced a horrifying 24 hours on the weekend of the crucifixion. Let's start at the beginning. After abandonment by his friends, agonizing hours in prayer, Jesus is arrested and brought to court, an innocent man on trial under false pretenses. Jesus' first physical trauma was being struck across the face by a Roman soldier during his questioning. He was then blindfolded, spat on, and struck in the face by multiple people, all the while being mocked. Anyone who has ever been beaten knows how humiliating that is. After a sleepless night, dehydrated, beaten up, and bruised, he then is presented before the Roman authorities. It was here that Jesus was sentenced to be whipped, or more accurately, scourged. To understand the pain of this sentence, let me explain scourging. The flagellum is a short whip with several heavy leather thongs with two small balls of lead or bone near the end of each. Jesus is first stripped of his clothing and his hands are tied to a post above his head. The Roman legionnaire steps forward, holding the flagellum in his hand. The whip comes down heavy on Jesus' shoulders, back, and legs, at first cutting only through skin. As the lashes continue, the leather thongs begin to cut into the tissue under the skin. Blood begins to ooze from capillaries and veins, and soon there is arterial bleeding from the muscles themselves. The small ball of lead and bone creates bruises, which are subsequently broken open by the following blows. Finally, the skin on the back hangs off in long, mangled ribbons, and the entire area of the back is an unrecognizable mass of bleeding and torn tissue. The scourging is complete. Jesus is exhausted, but the Roman soldiers see something funny. This beaten Jew claiming to be a king. So they place a robe on his mangled back, a staff in his hands, and a small bundle of flexible branches, often used for fires, with long thorns on his head. They place the thorny branches on his scalp and begin to strike him. Keep in mind, these are soldiers. These would have been heavy blows to a man already beaten hours before and just scourged. Then, as though this evil were not enough, they take his staff and begin to beat him on the head, driving the long thorns deeper into the scalp. They tire of their game, and like the careless removal of a surgical bandage, they rip the robe from his back. The robe had most likely become adherent to the clots of blood and serum, and its removal would have incited violent, excruciating pain. It was almost like being whipped all over again. He is now given the heavy wooden patibulum to carry, tied across his shoulders. But the weight of the cross, combined with the shock of enormous blood loss, is overbearing. And as he carries the beam on the lacerated skin and muscles of his shoulders, human muscles have been pushed beyond endurance. Simon of Cyrene is recruited by a soldier to help Jesus carry the cross to Golgotha. Despite what is often depicted in art, Roman historical accounts and experimental work show us that the nail was not driven through the palm, but between the two small bones in the wrist, in order to support the weight of the human body. The soldier finds the depression in the wrist and drives the nail between the bones in both wrists. Then he drives a nail through both feet with the knees moderately flexed. As he hangs on the cross, he is applying weight on the median nerves in his wrists between the bones, and fiery, excruciating pain shoots along the fingers and up to the arms to explode in the brain. To avoid this, he pushes himself up by putting his full weight on the nails in his feet, causing an incredible agony in a different location. Waves of cramps sweep his fatigued muscles, resulting in deep, throbbing pain. He can no longer push himself upward. In this position, his pectoral muscles eventually become paralyzed. He can draw breath, but cannot exhale. He must fight for every short breath. And as carbon dioxide builds in his blood, reducing the cramps, he is again barely able to push himself up. And this went on for hours. Joint-rending cramps, intermittent partial asphyxiation, and searing pain as his lacerated back moves up and down the rough timber. After this, due to his failing body, his heart begins to compress, causing a crushing pain in his chest. After hours of pain, he finally stretches his legs for one last proclamation. Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. And he gives up his life and dies. Honestly, this script was very difficult to write. It felt tragic and depressing to research such heinous suffering in an innocent and perfect man. Mankind quite simply.
I'm going to bring myself back on. I think we have a another video, which is about 7 or 8 minutes. Is that right? And I want to get to that. I want to explain to you. I wanted to go through exactly what Jesus went through. And we're not talking about the flies that were probably flying around and the other insults that were going around. Think about what this man did for you. When you're thinking about all those other things that are going on in society. And we got to be attention to time, Mr. Anderson. So if you can go ahead and start that other video, think about what Jesus did for you and compare it to what you're hearing in society today. Absolutely unbelievable. The pain, the agony, the humiliation. And I hope we can get that other clip going. Again, I don't want to run over time today. We got to keep within 2 hours. Or not. Can you get that other video, Mr. Anderson? Or is it too long?
Let me try. I gotta reload here.
Okay. And we'll cut it off at just before the 2-minute mark, so we can capture all of it. But again, I just wanted to emphasize, I get upset about what's happening to other people in the world today, and something or somebody asked me the question, well, what about what happened to Jesus? Well, today you got a pretty good idea what did happen to Jesus, and pretty nasty, about as nasty as it gets to the Son of God. Amazing. And the sacrifice he made for us.
Let me try running this one.
Okay.
You ready?
Yep.
Walking on the road to Jerusalem. The time had come to sacrifice again. My 3 small children, they walked beside me on the road. The reason that they came was to watch the Lamb. Daddy, Daddy, what will we see there? There's so much that we don't understand. So I told them of Moses and Father Abraham. And then I said, dear children, watch the Lamb. There will be so many in Jerusalem today. We must be sure the Lamb doesn't run away. I told them of Moses and Father Abraham. Then I said, dear children, watch the Lamb. When we reached the city, I knew something must be wrong. There were no joyful worshipers, no joyful worship songs. I stood there with my children in the midst of angry men. Then I heard the crowd cry out, crucify him. We tried to leave the city, but we could not get away. Forced to play in this drama, a part I did not wish to play. Why upon this day were men condemned to die? Why were we standing here where soon they would pass by? I looked and said, even now they come. The first one cried for mercy, the people gave him none. The second one was violent, he was arrogant and loud. I can still hear his angry voice screaming at the crowd. Then someone said, there's Jesus. I scarce believed my eyes. A man so badly beaten, he barely looked alive. Blood poured from his body, from the thorns upon his brow, running down the cross and falling to the ground. I watched him as he struggled, I watched him as he fell. The cross came down upon his back, the crowd began to yell. In that moment I felt such agony, in that moment I felt such loss, till a Roman soldier grabbed my arm and screamed, you carry his cross. First I tried to resist him, then his hand reached for his sword. So I knelt and took the cross from my Lord, placed it on my shoulder, started down the street. tear shedding was running down my cheek. Ran away. Daddy, Daddy, what have we seen here? There's so much that we don't understand. So I took them in my arms. We turned and faced the cross.
Join us next week for Last Call with BJ Edwards.